thanks for the introduction, and thanks for being here, everyone. It's always a great event to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to tell you three stories this afternoon, and it won't be an hour and a half. We'll go fast. But I just came back from Australia, and I want to put some of what we're doing here into the context of what the Australians are doing, which is really super interesting. Has anybody been to Australia? All right, yeah. So many of you understand. I mean, we have a lot of kinship with Australia in terms of how we farm. They happen to farm in their winter mostly, except in Queensland they also farm in their summer. They can do double crop, but it's really just a very interesting thing. So we'll end with a slideshow of just what I observed and what I think was noteworthy about Australia. In the meantime, we'll just put the work that we're doing in Canada into the Australian context a little bit as well. So drones are legal in Australia. They grandfathered in any aerial label that has a fungicide on it, or if a fungicide has an aerial label, you can legally apply it using drones. What's interesting there is that they're not really implementing drones to the same degree that we are, in fact, even though we're just at the very beginning of our implementation. And what we learned was that, in fact, some of the registrants are asking that the permission to spray their product by drone be revoked by their regulatory agency. They're not comfortable with their product being applied by drone, and they don't want to be grandfathered in on any old aerial label. So that was kind of a very interesting observation I made while being over there. The issue with drones really has to do with whether they're doing a good job in terms of spray deposition. And I just wanted to show you this video and ask you this question. Can you see the corn tassels moving under the rotor downwash? And I would say no, right? There's nothing moving. And the question now is, can you see it now? So that's a drone. So the little machine is creating downwash, the big machine isn't. Why is that? And the reason is the big machine is flying so much faster that the downwash it generates to stay aloft, which is equivalent to its weight, is dispersed over a very large area because it's moving so fast. So actually, if a helicopter or spray plane flew over our heads at ceiling height, which is about the height they fly, we would hardly feel the downwash because they're going 120 to 140 miles per hour. They're going very, very fast. The drone is going 15 miles per hour, maybe 18 these days. That's about what they're flying these days. So the downwash is not as diluted, and it actually goes down with the spray goes down with the downwash. You can see on this soybean field, you can see the downwash and the spray arrive together. When we fly with a crude aircraft here, the downwash comes first, like right away, and the spray deposits about 2 or 3 seconds later. So they're spatially and temporally in a different scale, like they're just not at the same time. So that's what's happening. And this downwash is a big part of what we have to talk about with drones. It's good and it's bad. And I just wanted to shed some light on it. So first of all, what are the benchmarks for drone operation? Well, let's talk about the same things we always talk about: productivity, water volume, spray quality, and deposit uniformity. These are really the benchmarks for quality application anywhere using any kind of method. The productivity side is a new thing. And we saw Trevor talk about their drone kit. We're starting to see drone trailers, tender trailers. They're a specific unit. They have a hot tank pre-mixed usually. In some cases this will be water, and there'll be a hot tank in here. They'll have a generator. And basically what we're talking about is a drone coming in for refilling and swapping batteries, and the drone will be emptied in about 5 minutes or so, depending on how much water you're applying, and it will need to be filled and swapped in less than 1 minute. So it adds a whole new element to hurry up to the filling process. We're filling fast already with the handler and the combine, but these guys have to fill even faster. It's a hot transfer. This is a mock-up of something that Derek Friesen sent me this winter. This is the dash unit that they're proposing to build, and it'll have a platform for 4 drones. It'll have an air-conditioned cab. Air-conditioned not just for operator comfort, but air-conditioned because the batteries overheat. And so even with an air-cooled charging system, they're having a hard time keeping the batteries cold enough because the charging and discharge cycle both generate heat, and so the batteries at some point just get too hot. If it's 30 degrees out or more, and it rarely is when we spray, but it can be in a fungicide situation, they have to shut down because of the heat of the batteries cannot be dissipated. So we're talking about the operators or the filler, the mixer loaders being super busy. If you have 2 drones, which is very common, you might be landing each drone at 2.5 minute intervals now. So you have 2.5 minutes between drone landings and 1 minute to fill and swap. You don't have any time to smoke your cigarettes anymore. Okay, so that's happening. So I sometimes think, everyone's excited about drones, but what gives you the better life? Sitting in a cab for 35 minutes in an air-conditioned cab, listening to your classic rock station, and then filling for 10 minutes every 30 or 40 minutes, or being outside with a generator blasting in your ear and filling that up with gasoline every 10 minutes, and never having a moment's rest. So anyway. That's just my opinion. Okay, so here's another problem. This deposit density thing. These are deposits of different spray qualities that we have in the spraying world. And this is about between 7 and 10 gallons per acre or so. And you can see we have choice in terms of droplet size. And that's useful because of drift management and other things, and evaporation management. When we go to 2 and 3 gallons per acre, which is what the drone volumes are, we are talking about having no choice in droplet size. Very little choice, and all the choices are going to be fine. Okay? Fine, very fine, medium perhaps. Coarse, probably not so much of an option. So that's a difficulty. The rotary atomizers that are common on drones now are good. I like rotary atomizers. They tend to produce sprays that are finer than we need. This is the same picture I just showed you, but in operation. This is a fine setting. When we set that to coarse and coarser, you can set up to 500 microns. We didn't really notice an appreciable change in coarseness. Like, it certainly got coarser, but it never got as coarse as we thought it should be, according to the settings. The really important part about using a drone, though, is to know how wide your swath is. If you're driving a 120-foot sprayer up and down the field, how wide's your swath? It's 120 feet, right? And you can enter plus or minus 10 inches depending on your preference for overlap. When you're flying a drone, you're never sure how wide your swath is unless you measure it, and the conditions create change. Okay, so if you have a drone, don't believe the manual on how wide your swath is. Don't believe your reseller. They're not lying to you, but you have to test the drone's swath width under the conditions you use it because it's changeable. So it's a necessary part, and you have to repeat it. You have to do it a few times to really figure it out. And I'll just quickly go through what it might look like. So this is a drone. This is the XAG P100 Pro. It's a 40-liter drone. We're just flying it at 5 gallons per acre right now, just to show you what the turbulence looks like. And what we would need to do is fly it under the conditions we intend to use it under. So it has a side when you can see there's vortices. When we landed that drone, it was wet. Okay, so remember, you're folding up those wings and loading it on the back of a pickup truck when you're done. So it's going to be contaminated. So you have to be mindful of that. When we measure swath width, the easiest thing to do is to put water-sensitive paper on little wooden blocks. So we cut these blocks, and they're at about a 30 or 40 degree angle just on a miter. And we'll strap them down with a little clasp so that they don't fly away. And then we'll measure, we'll do these at meter intervals, and then just look at them. We also have got the swath gobbler now. The swath gobbler uses this receipt paper. And this is Jason DeVoe, my partner in Spears 101. And he's just putting the first load out there. And we basically buy this thing, and then we put dye into a tank, and we fly the drone over the swath gobbler, and then as soon as it's flown, we can't help ourselves. We run quickly and have a look what just happened. And you can see exactly where the spray went, what droplet size deposited, what droplet density deposited. You can have a very quick visual. It's paper, so it has a huge spread factor. So it's not really good for droplet sizing, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what just happened. Right? And so what we'll do is we'll reel that in. This is Michael Reinke. He's from Michigan State University, and he visits us from time to time to do these trials in Ontario. And he developed this little track where you can just reel things in. And those days, Jason and I were still on our hands and knees, folding things in these rubber bands to keep it from blowing away. And then this guy went for coffee and said, yeah, I'm done. Great guy though. We then take all the rolls we collected over the previous few days and we run them through this huge little scanner. And that's part of the swath goblet setup. And we can scan every inch or every 5 inches or every 20 inches. It's up to us how often we want to scan. And then we very quickly have an idea about what the deposit actually looks like. Okay, it is a process, though. You do have to go through the scanning process. And before I show you the scans, I'm going to show you what a scan looks like from a ground sprayer. Okay, so here's a ground sprayer. This is a 40-45. We are driving into the screen. Wind's coming from the left at about 20K. And this is the deposit we got. Here's the average deposit. Here's plus or minus 25%. Okay, just as benchmark. And this is a ULD 11004 at 60 psi, so it's a common low drift nozzle that John Deere sells. We went, these are still my Aussie slides, so we went 15 miles an hour. I think that is 3 foot off the ground. I think you understand the numbers. Here it is. So here's the deposit rep 1. It's not great. Okay. Here's rep 2. Here's rep 3. So we were a little bit surprised to see deposits that poor, to be quite honest. But we ended up basically accepting it as a new normal. We're making do because we're maybe overdosing slightly and sort of mitigating some of the effects of the low deposits. It's also maybe a little bit more mixing than we had in this particular case. This is a drone pattern. It's not a particularly good or particularly bad pattern. It's just one of the hundreds of patterns that we have in our repertoire. So they look kind of jagged. They typically are peaked. They typically don't have a large flat region. And then there's regions here where they need to overlap. So this gray line here, that's droplet density and droplets per square centimeter. And this is percent coverage. So the droplets per square centimeter are a little more sensitive when coverage is low. So we've been using that parameter more than any other. Here's the XHE 100 Pro that I showed you earlier, flying at 5 gallons per acre. This is with a little side wind. This is a pattern. So the wind came a little bit from the left, and you can see how strongly that displaced the spray. So it feathers out downwind, you can see that, but it doesn't feather out upwind, obviously. But the small drops are the ones that are to blame here. They can't fly really against the wind, not like a large drop. This is rep 2 and rep 3. So these reps are separated. Basically, we had rep 1 by that wall, we had rep 2 here, we had rep 3 over there, and we would just fly them in one swoop. So they were flown within about 4 or 5 seconds. So this is really the same moment in time, and yet the swath width differed even within that short difference in distance. So a little bit surprised at that. Over all of our studies, this is the summary. If you fly too low, and some people might want to fly low to prevent spray drift, that's a mistake. You look at this bimodal distribution, you need to have a flying height that allows the spray to distribute over the width of the flow field. You rely on the downwash to distribute that spray and give you an actual swath width. If you don't do that, you get this bimodal distribution. Now if you go to the right height, it looks a lot better. Stylized, of course. Now this is flying with the wind. If you flew against the wind, it would widen. So if you fly up and down the field into a headwind with a tailwind, headwind, tailwind, your swath width goes wide, narrow, wide, narrow, wide. That's what happens. So you will have striping, or you will overlap. You'll have one or the other. Okay. If you go faster, your swath gets wider. If you use smaller volumes or smaller droplets, your swath gets wider. Okay. It just is more likely to spread out in that downward flow field. Okay. If you have a side wind, you get that same skewed pattern I showed you a few minutes ago. And you obviously have to offset that downwind deposit somewhat upwind. So that's what aerial applicators already do. And they know how to do that. Drone applicators absolutely must also do that. Here's just some numbers. This is a small drone. This is a T10. It's a 25-liter drone. But this is with a headwind, with a 4.4 meter swath. This is with a tailwind. We had a 2.9 meter swath width. So that's a 30% difference. That's very significant in my opinion. If we want to do a really proper job of measuring swath width, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, this is a swath, and that's a typical one. We'll draw a line here where we think the plateau ought to be. So we'll average kind of the plateau region. Typically, our program says, take the maximum, subtract 10%. That's about where we want to be. And then the dashed line is the 50% point. And the reason we put a dashed line here is that's the point where we want to overlap these feathered out bits. That gives us the taper, overlap gives us the same height, right? Makes sense. So we put them together side by side, just like that. So in this case, the swath width would be 3.5 meters. And then we add them together, and it looks like that. Now you might notice that that's pretty uniform, except we're quite a bit above what we thought our application volume should be. So we're maybe 30% higher or even more than what we ought to be. So we're over applying, right? So what do? Let's widen that swath. Okay, so if we make it too wide, we get these gaps, and this is going to be striping. So we come to some middle ground, and we say, all right, there might be striping, maybe not so much. There might be some overdosing, but it's just really, we have to allow for this. This is the price we pay for having a poor pattern. This is the best we can do. And you know what? That's one pass. Okay, if we did this again, it would be a little different. So we typically do it 3 times. And then we do this process each of those times, and then we average those 3 and say, we think this is your swath width. And it might be plus or minus. We're not actually that sure. This is one of the problems of spraying with a drone. Here is the T50. So this is the drone that you would buy today. We set it for 250 micron VMD, a 3-meter flying height, which is normal. This is an 18 mile per hour, 19 mile per hour travel speed. This is 3 gallons. This is rep 1. So just look at the pattern. I think that's actually a good pattern. You know, how my standards have changed, right? But I think this is what I consider for drone a good pattern. This is rep 1, and we can just estimate the swath width by going to the halfway point of the trapezoid. It's about 6.5 meters. That's a quick and dirty. If we do rep 2, so this is sprayed 1 hour later. Rep 1 we sprayed at about 1 p.m. in September in Ontario. Rep 2 we sprayed at about 2 p.m. And rep 3 we sprayed at about 3 p.m. Otherwise everything was the same. It's the same day. And look at the difference in swath width. So there's no doubt about it that we're going to get striping. And this is just one such example of a field. This is sprayed in Alabama. This is given to us by Steve Lee. He hosts a conference on drones. That conference is on next week for 3 days. It's in Alabama. It's a end users conference. It's fantastic. I've never attended, but Jason will present some of our drone research at it next week. So he flew low and he flew high, and then I'll just show you, this is the low flying height. So here's the high flying height area here that you can see the drift. The low flying height we had this striping. Okay, and that's a burn off application. So you can also see the drift here. You can see what happens at the field edge where you have kind of this ambiguous area. The drone does not kind of fly into a headland at full speed, doesn't fly through a headland. When it reaches the edge of the field, it stops flying. So it doesn't fly through a headland like a Raspberry drives through a headland, so that's a little bit tricky. You have to trick it a little bit to do that. So you get these regions here where it's not really a definite start-stop situation. I want to show you something now that was shared with me by Kevin Falk. He's a scientist with Corteva in Carmen, Manitoba, and what he did last summer was he seeded some soybeans here with a plot sprayer, and then he mapped out these prescriptions of different drone treatments. So we went 10, 5, and 2 gallons randomized with a drone, and this is at the day of treatment. And this is 4 weeks after application. And this was clopyrrolid launtrel, kills soybeans. So you can see now that the soybeans are dead. This is, I guess, an RGB, some kind of a transformation of color. So these are the individual drone swaths that he flew, and you can see the difference in swath width as he went. Notice too that the rows are going this way, so sometimes the spray might go along a row a little bit, right? It would look quite different if you were spraying with the direction of the rows. It would look different. What struck me is this, and the reason I asked Kevin to share these slides with me, which he agreed to, was that you know, you dial in a swath width and you're going to have over and under that swath width. That's kind of, unfortunately, a fact. He then went so far as to actually calculate the area that was actually covered with some thresholding and found these swath widths, which I found interesting, you know, as low as 5.5, as high as 6.9, 7.3 here. So again, a 25% difference perhaps in swath width that was observed. So a caution. Jason on his own did some work on swath width in crop as well and found the following. So when he buried the swath gobbler in a wheat canopy, he found a 30% reduction in the width of the swath. This is in the bare soil or grass, and this is in the canopy. And we expect the overall deposit to go down. That's absolutely expected. The pattern shape is similar, but the overall swath width, when he calculated it, was about 30% different, which again, so you kind of have to calibrate your sprayer for the canopy you're going to go into, okay, unlike a ground sprayer. And we did some work where we looked at the vectors produced by the airflow, so we were able to sort of calculate which direction the droplets are depositing from. So this is if we were hovering with an observer drone above the flight path. Here's our sampler layout. We're flying into a headwind. You can see that the headwind is causing a lot of the deposition, but there's also a side wind that is produced by the drone as the air comes down. It goes to the side, and it will carry the droplets with it. And it's doing that on the right side and to a somewhat lesser degree on the left side. This is dependent on the wind direction. It might have been slightly more favorable for one or the other. And if we stood behind the drone and watched it fly into the screen here, we saw something really interesting. At the 3 meter and 9 meter location, those vectors are horizontal. What that means is we had similar amounts of spray on the top, like of a collector here, as we did on the underside of that same collector. So underleaf coverage at that location. These samples are 1 foot off the ground. And so there is absolutely spray, air coming down and then coming back up, but also moving out. Okay. So kind of a complicated field. Hopefully we'll shed some light on it. I want to go back to this row observation from the soybean field. When the flight path relative to the planted rows is against the rows, so the rows are running perpendicular here to the flight path, the spray distributed nicely and kind of went along these channels. But when you went with the rows are up and down, you can see these individual corn rows are acting as windbreaks, preventing the swath from actually spreading as wide as you think it might need to. So in a row crop situation, we're not in a row crop situation here, but in many other parts of Canada we are, and in North America, that actually really matters. So now you have to manage row direction and wind direction. You want to spray perpendicular to row and perpendicular to wind. That's actually what you want to do. So this would have implications for seeding direction because you know you're prevailing, right? So this is a whole new ball game now for how we set up spraying. I want to just give you one word of caution. Drone applied glyphosate here, edible beans here. Maturing nicely, except where there was glyphosate drift. I was asked to comment on this. Did I think that the drone applicator was at fault? It didn't take me long to say, I do think so. Right? You don't have to be in, Anyway, one thing I want to say is, We are using drones that were developed in Asia for Asian conditions. We're using drones that are using to spray rice paddies, where a drone is a huge improvement over a knapsack sprayer in terms of operator exposure and quality of work. We're trying to deploy those drones on our large Saskatchewan fields. It's not the same thing. We're at the very beginning of drone design. There's legislation in front of the Senate in the US that I don't know whether they voted on yet. The House of Representatives has passed it, that will prevent Chinese-made drones from being sold in the US because of spy concerns. It is possible that we will not have access to Chinese or Asian-made drones in the near future. It's possible. And so this little company, Guardian, set up a new drone platform that is NATO supply chain, 100% NATO. Okay, so they are using a military alliance, member countries, to go and build a large, heavy drone that simulates a ground application. They're flying, they're not swapping batteries, they're using a large battery that they're plugging into recharge. It will go from a 40% charge to a 60% charge in 1 minute. That's all it needs. So it's a much bigger battery than they actually need to have. The CEO of this company, Adam, is a battery guy. He's not a drone guy. So he's completely rewriting the book on what he thinks drones can do. And they're going to fly 60 miles per hour. So they have a low flying height, they have a rapid discharge of the spray, and their flow downwash is behind, just like we had with those other crewed aircraft. So they're spraying to clean air, and it goes down in clean air, and the swath uniformity is much better that way. This is generation 2 of our development of drone technology. We're not nearly done. Okay, so this is going places that we can't really predict at the moment. So drones provide a valuable niche. I do think so. Certainly logistically, they make a lot of sense. Low water volumes do limit what you can do. For example, the Garlon XRT label. This is a herbicide that is registered for use with drones. It is a woody perennials in pastures and rangeland. It's not an agricultural pesticide. It's imazapyr. Says on their label, coarse or coarser. No currently sold drone, the T40, T50, XAG, can do this. So we have a problem already. Swath width, I've already mentioned. It varies with every variable that we have measured. It varies with that. And that's the main challenge. Okay. I want to now move to a spot sprays and then segue into Australia. Are there any questions on drones? Thoughts on drones? Or we would leave it for the end? Any drone users in the room? Spray drone users? Okay. Anybody thinking about spray drones? Yeah, I think a lot of us are. I think they provide a real opportunity.
Tom,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So basically after your presentation on drones, they aren't really suited for this problem. It's in wide open.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand. Are they? They're not really suited?
Not really suited. You get so many winds and everything else. They get the drifting, and it would be a cost. I think the cost per acre would go sky high.
Yeah, I think you may well be right. I mean, time will tell. We are seeing people who are quite happily spraying their fungicides with drones. They're typically buying 2 drones, and they're doing 1,000 or 2,000 acres in the summer for fungicides with drones. I've asked some of them how happy they are with the outcome. The answer is, I'm very happy. And then I asked them, why are you happy? And there are 2 main reasons they're happy. They don't have sprayer tracks in their field, and they didn't pay an aerial applicator $15 an acre. Okay, so they're happy for those 2 reasons. And I asked them, did you check on how well it worked? And usually that's when they say, well, you know, it stopped raining and we didn't really get the disease pressure, blah, blah, blah. But we don't really have really good answers on how well it's working yet.
Well, that's, you got a custom applicator right here. The thing is if we've used the helicopter on the farm for the track reason, and at $11 an acre, you can't possibly get into a drone situation and get set up for that.
Much less than that, actually. The drones, the T50 drone is currently retailing at $37,000 Canadian. It will do 20 acres an hour. It's not actually a bad cost per hour or per acre. It's a very favorable cost. The main challenge that I see is you can't really go more than 2 or 3 gallons per acre or your logistics go to pieces. And secondly, you probably need more than one person to do the job, and that's the limiting factor. Technically, if you're spraying with 2 drones, you need 2 drone operators because they don't swarm yet. It's legal to swarm, but the spray drones don't swarm. So you need 2 controllers, 2 people with visual line of sight. Okay? And you need somebody to swap and fill. Who's got 3 people? If one person does it, the likelihood of an error or an accident is high. So these are currently, in my opinion, the constraints. That's a great question, though. Thank you for that. Okay, let's talk about green on green, green on brown. As of last count, this was in January, green on brown weeded has 27 units sold in Western Canada. I actually thought we'd have more by now. John Deere See and Spray Select is growing rapidly. I don't have a firm number because not everybody tells me, but I do ask a lot. And so I'm estimating between 50 and 100 units are sold in Western Canada at the moment. John Deere, by the way, also sold green on green units in Manitoba. They sold 18 See and Spray Premium, that's a single tank green on green unit, row crops only, corn, soybeans, and cotton. And they sold those in late 2024. Why? Well, because they weren't sold. They were a free giveaway for 1 month. Yes, sirree. And I asked them, I was at Manitoba Ag Days, I said, why did you give away a unit that you could sell for $300,000? And they said, well, first of all, we're not selling it for $300,000, we're selling it for $25,000, $14,000 for the unit and $11,000 to install. And this time we're giving it away, and we gave it away because logistically for us it was too difficult to run all these demos all the time. Wow. Okay. So that's something that only John Deere can do. Trimble and Bilberry has, my guess, is about 10 or 12 units installed in Western Canada with their ASC Plus. So that is it. That is our landscape currently. I think the green on green issue is slow. It's also slow in Australia because it's ambiguous what it costs to run it. So there are these fees you have to pay either per acre per year, or per acre per spray pass, or per acre not sprayed, which is the John Deere model that has just come out. So that these are confusing and they may change. So you may owe a company a lot of money at the end of a spraying season for the privilege of using their software, basically. There's also these concerns about, are we getting everything? If I have to respray, do I have time to respray it, or do I have a yield loss, or do I have a resistance issue? What are the issues? The green on brown, Weeded really has the market. They're, I think, in my opinion, a terrific system. We have a narrow window of opportunity for this. We have just the small weeds situation because we're doing a pre-seed burn off. They are being used for desiccation, so reg loan or heat in peas, lentils, chickpeas, whatever. You spray out the green parts only. Everything else is browning off, so you've got that. You can do a pre-harvest. Maybe you got some kochia that came through that the Syncro didn't get. And you can brown that off with the spot spray as well. So that absolutely works nicely. Harvest ease. There's some talk about spot spraying fungicides, so just to have a threshold setting so your drowned out spots or your knolls don't get the fungicide because they won't benefit from it. For example, See and Spray Select is going to be offering a variable rate fungicide based on biomass detection. So these systems are evolving. They're still green on brown, but they're getting greater utility. One of the issues I see is just what's the right nozzle for it. And we'll quickly go through some scenarios. So I'm just doing this theoretical here, 30-degree fan. Most of these spot sprays are 10-inch spacing, except for John Deere's, either 10, 15, or 20. Let's say that your boom sways 10 inches up or down. Let's say your target height is 27 inches. These are all really like storybook kind of scenarios. Let's assume that we sway low 10 inches. Our single nozzle activation is narrowed to 9 inches now. We're now overdosing by 60% because it's narrow, it's more concentrated. If we sway up, and we're now at 37 inches, our swath width is now 20 inches, or bandwidth, I mean, we're now at a 30% underdose. So that's a serious problem. So for that reason, most of these systems have a single or double nozzle coverage. So you can turn that on, or you can have a safety factor. And currently, a lot of safety factors being deployed because of this issue. And so let's look at again at 30-degree fan at 10-inch spacing. So we get overlap, now we get striping, and now we get good overlap. So the target rate is more or less being hit each time. If we go to a 40-inch fan, we can correct for that. So we have a 20-inch fan, a 12-inch fan, and then 27-inch bandwidth. And you can see that even though the overlap is changing the overall target rate, because it's a little booms, a little section of boom, it's the same, right? As long as you have the overlap, you're more or less the target rate. So nozzle choice is indeed quite limited. So the DG line of the T-Jet nozzles are available in a 4003, 4004. That's very common in Australia. There are some new low drift nozzles. So Lucas talked this morning about their line of nozzles. I'm not sure, did you mention your band nozzles? You did? Yeah. So you have 20, 40, and 60-degree DX nozzles, a pre-orifice style. So that's very good. MagnoJet has a nozzle, but it's not available in Canada. There's a nozzle I saw in Australia, which is a DG 65055 stainless steel. It's a DG style, it's a pre-orifice, 65-degree, obviously it's an odd size, 055. But this is a nozzle that T-Jet brought to the Australian market because they have to have a very coarse or coarser spray for their 2,4-D applications. And in order to be on label, that was a necessity to make that a possibility. One thing I like about the spot spray world is that we have as applied maps. So basically we know where we sprayed, that's where the weeds were. From an agronomic perspective, I think these are pure gold. We can do all kinds of very cool things agronomically. You know, is there a problem area developing? How did our herbicide treatment deal with this problem area? We can target visits. It's not a random quad trip across the field. Okay. How are we doing?
Yeah.
We're good?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. All right. Let's go to Australia. So Australia's a sunburned country, right? Anybody read Bill Bryson's book, In a Sunburned Country? If you like travel books, travel logs, start with that one, Bill Bryson. In a Sunburned Country. I read it. It's hilarious and insightful. It is the driest continent in the world, but it's largely dry because the central part is dry. Actually, the coastal regions are quite wet. If you look at this band of moisture here, we're in the 400 to 600 millimeter per year band. What is that? That's 20 to 30 inches. That's what that is. That's something we can't even imagine having. I told the guys, they think that Canada's wet. And I said, we actually have been growing crops here on, okay guys, what are the numbers for this area? 4 to 5 inches, is that fair? If that. A lot of those inches came in tenths, right? So that didn't really matter. We had a couple of soakers, and one of them came in September. So, I mean, we're growing crop on moisture reserves that really aren't there anymore. And when I hear about moisture levels of 400 to 600 or more millimeters per year, I'm going, you guys, you're not as dry as you claim to be. But there is a really interesting angle on this rainfall. And that angle is that they have seasonal rains that depend on the latitude. So if you're in the south, if you're in Victoria here, you have wet winters and dry summers. The most of the rain comes in the winter time. That's when they grow their crop. Okay? And as you go further north, you have a transition to more and more summer rains until you're in Brisbane, where the majority is a wet summer and low winter rainfall. A wet summer and a low winter. They grow their cereal and oilseed crops and pulse crops in their winter, and they'll grow their cotton and sorghum in the summer. So yes, they have rain. They also can't rest, and they also sweat a lot. So it's absolutely stiflingly hot over there in the summertime. So I found that to be really interesting. Compare that to Canada. So this is a 40 years or so history of rainfall. Like we are here, and that's 270 to 510, right? That's 10 inches at best. We've not seen 10 inches in Saskatchewan in a long time, growing season precip. Okay, so we're drier than they are. Now, here's what we do have. We don't have evapotranspiration in our winter. Okay, we don't have it, and they have year-round moisture losses. So here's just a picture I took of one of the talks I was at. So I was at the GRDC updates in 5 different cities. So here is Billa. This is just north of Gundawindi. So this is at the New South Wales, Queensland border, basically. And this is a prime agricultural area. They have deep clay soils. I mean, they have soils to die for, to be honest. And they will grow wheat in the winter, and they'll just chem fallow in the summer, and they'll grow barley and wheat. They don't grow canola out that far north, but they'll grow the occasional chickpea. And something interesting would have happened in the winter of 18. They would have had lots of growing season moisture. I would have said, okay, we can go with a summer crop now. And they would have said, okay, we'll do rain-fed sorghum. They would have skipped 2 years even. Wheat, then go back to wheat, nothing. Chickpea, again sorghum. In that region, sorghum or cotton. Not everybody grows cotton, but cotton's a very profitable crop. If you grow cotton though, in the summer you will not grow a crop in the following winter. Your moisture's depleted, you're dry, okay? And so you'll definitely become fallow. So it's a very different system. This is cotton. This is the first cotton field I ever walked into in my whole life, 1 month ago, 3 weeks ago. This is on the way to Moree. So you can see it's they call it a luvisol. It's basically a clay that cracks when dry and expands when wet. It's not familiar. So they have, when I looked at it, I thought I was at home, to be quite honest. It has the same feel. It's quite dry there at the moment. Driving into towns like Moree, you see large grain handling facilities. The GRDC, by the way, is their crop commission. So they combine crops. And they don't have a commission for canola or wheat. Everybody pays their check off to one organization. The GRDC, therefore, has a budget of $200 million per year. Okay, now they can do stuff with that. And they do. So look at this. They're gonna have a national weed management initiative where they're putting $25 million in over 5.5 years, and they're gonna fund 23 weed researchers in Australia. We don't have 23 weed researchers in Canada. We don't even have half that many in Canada. And GRDC is gonna pick up the tab for that investment. That's what farmer dollars are doing in their country. They can actually do stuff. I think it's incredibly exciting. They're planning to invest in 2023 to 25, the next 5 years, $1.2 to $1.4 billion into agricultural research in Australia. Farmer money leveraged with other monies that they can leverage with. Like, that's an investment that our own federal government wouldn't be capable of doing, right? This is an incredible investment. So there is something to be said for pooling your money and doing big things. The other challenge that I saw was that they are reviewing a lot of their chemicals, and the one of interest really is diquat and paraquat, which we have diquat as Reglone, we don't have paraquat, but we had the diquat paraquat mix called Chromoxone PDQ about 15 years ago for a couple of years, I remember that? And then it was deregistered. Well, they call this spray seed, and this is an essential part of their ChemFal, their summer sprays. If they lose this, they lose their resistance fighting tool in summer sprays. And they are expecting a decision in the fourth quarter of 2025, and very likely it'll be reduced rates and closed transfer systems. So they're going to be looking at a serious change. Their summer weeds don't look familiar. Well, you know barnyard grass. Milk thistle is a sow thistle. It's an annual sow thistle. Resistance issues, very severe resistance issues. These are grasses. Most of these are grasses. Fleabane you may have heard of. I mean, it's not a weed here, but Canada fleabane, obviously a weed in Ontario. And so on the ryegrass they have. And they have all these grasses. But they are fighting resistance at every step.
Yeah.
The spot sprayers have such a unique spot in Australia. We don't have the same logistical spot. What they're able to do is do their summer spraying. They'll summer spray all summer long. It's like, remember when we used to ChemFal, we'd run their rod? Who's old enough for the rod weeder? Right? But Chris, you're from Manitoba, you never had a rod weeder.
No, we did.
You did. So the rod weeder was a low disturbance kind of way of getting weeds in your ChemFallow, but how often did you rod weed? Well, every time you had to, basically. So you're through that field a few times. If you ChemFallow, you're through that field a few times. If you're summer spraying in Australia, you're summer spraying all summer long. Okay? Especially when you move to predominant summer rainfall cycles. Because there's new germination, so that's northern New South Wales and Queensland. They're summer spraying all summer long. And the spot sprayer has made it there. So this is Spray Sense, it's an Australian company. They are now equipped on all case sprayers. Okay, so you buy a case, you put a Spray Sense system on it to do your spot spraying for you. Okay? It's an RGB based system. This is the Carbon Beat, this is a French system. Jeremy Jones runs a company called Darling Down Spray Tech. Jeremy Jones is from Pearson, Manitoba. He's lived in Australia for 11 years now. He's responsible for selling more weeded units than any other person alive. He sold the majority of weeded systems in Australia. And when I went to this meeting in Guniwindi, I met these farmers who showed me this. And I'm not sure if you can read this. I can't actually read it. This is a shot of their field. This is a line, these are lines here. This is the location of the robot sprayer. And this farmer said, my robot is snoozing right now. Because the wind gusts are too high. Okay. My tank is 45% full and I got this much water in my, this is fuel, this is water. And what does it say here? I'm 40% done my runs. When the wind gusts slow down, that robot will start again. If he thinks it's not running enough, he'll raise the threshold for wind gusts. While he's listening to people give scientific updates on research, blah, blah, blah. So you can, this is just another page of the same thing. You can see the weather information on the field, everything, wind direction, gust speed, blah, blah, blah. Everything is there. And he says maximum average wind speed kilometers per hour is 15. So an interesting observation. What he said was, if I put a human being on that sprayer and the wind gusted up, they'd continue spraying. But if I put a robot on that sprayer and I tell it when to stop, it'll stop. It's actually doing a better job, maybe. Okay, I don't want to make that claim. So I went out, Jeremy and I drove out one afternoon to this farmer, and interesting observation here, what are they doing? They're collecting rainwater, that's their spray water. It's water, everybody collects water off their roofs in Australia. He has 4 sprayers. He has a traditional pull type sprayer, like this is Croplands, made in Australia, in South Australia. This is Jeremy. This is another cropland sprayer. It's a pull type outside, so that's sprayer number 2. They also have a John Deere R16R, R616, sorry. I didn't see that one, it was on a different farm. And then they have another one that I'll show you in just a second here. So this is a pull type, and you can see the water collect. This is a grain handling system, by the way. This is a farm they bought, I believe, 4 years ago. It's a 5,000 acre farm in one block. One block. They don't have the Dominion land survey, so they put their roads wherever they want to. Well, this one doesn't have any roads in it, 5,000 acre block. So that's unique. Okay. So they'll have the same grain handling system that we have, but they put a lot of grain on the ground. So they have companies that develop these targeting systems. I put this picture in because why? What do you notice about this?
Travel line?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So this is controlled traffic farming. Now you know that there's some controlled traffic farming. You heard of Steve LaRock. Why does Steve LaRock champion controlled traffic farming in Alberta? Because he went to Australia, that's why. I didn't meet a farmer on my trip to Australia that wasn't doing controlled traffic. Can you believe that? What's everyone doing? 3-meter tracks on 12-meter offsets. Every 12 meters, you have 3 meters of track. So you are seeding, spraying, harvesting in multiples of 12. That's what you're doing. So their spares are 36 meters wide, their headers are 12 meters wide, etc., etc. They do not put a wheel outside of that tram line. And in fact, Jeremy told me when he services some equipment and he pulls a truck up to the field, he says, "Can I drive out to service the piece of equipment because I've got tools?" And they say, "Only if your truck is on 3-meter centers. Otherwise you're walking." That's how serious they are. And here's this 5,000 acre block. So I've got two things to pay attention to. They level in their tracks. They do that from time to time. But these are 12 meters apart. You see this? It's a weed. This farmer will trigger spraying that field to get that weed. And they'll use his robot. Yeah. 0 tolerance. Okay. This is an hour and a half west of Moree. We're just coming back from a field day. These are weeds. This is going to be summer rain. There's been summer rain here. And they're overdue for a spray, but they will spray. How much pesticide are they using on these fields? Less than 1% of the regular rate. It totally makes sense for them to have a spot spray. First of all, the weeds are big, they have all day, and they have 0 tolerance for survivors. What's happening is they are cleaning up their fields in the summertime, and they have reduced significantly the pressure on in-crop herbicide use because they're cleaning them up in the summer. It's something that I don't think we can replicate in Canada. We are not going to go back to summer fallow. This is Jeremy's app, so the machines he sells, he's got access to. So we went to look at this particular swarm bot. So the swarm bot is at the go-to location and paused, and it tells you the fuel and the liquid. The reason it's paused, it's time for a refill. Once a day, it gets a tender truck. Once a day. So that was kind of amazing. We went to it, we had the map, so we drove to it. And this is the first time I saw a swarm bot, so I said, I've got to capture this moment. And walked up to it. So it's a cropland sprayer on a 24-meter boom with weeded, 1-meter spacing, 25 centimeter nozzle spacing. It's got a tank on the unit. It's idling right now. Basically has all these stop buttons. You see these yellow boxes with the red buttons on it on all corners. It's got LiDAR, it's got cameras. It's autonomous, basically. It's about 100 horse or so, I'm not even sure, hydraulic motors. And it's just waiting for the tender. And we didn't know when he was coming, but we decided that we were going to wait. There's Jeremy. And he told me that these robots have freewheels, so if you have to go on a road, you tow it. So it has just like the spray coupe, has a hitch, like it comes down, or you can attach to it. You tow it behind your ute, and you tow it to the next field, because you can't operate it on the road, which makes sense, right? That makes total sense. Here's the tendering system. Remember, this is a 15,000 acre farm. Okay, they do not have the handler, because they have all day long. They don't have to hurry. Not only that, I later found out that they are on top of an aquifer on the Moree Plains. They have passive groundwater coming up to refill their holding tanks. They don't have to even pump water from a well. Now it's slightly saline, but that was interesting. This is paraquat, about to lose paraquat. Look at that system. I think that's 2-inch. I'm not even sure. Does it look like 2-inch? I think it might have. I don't think it was that big. And this is the PPE he's wearing for the most poisonous pesticide that we own, that we've ever produced. Yeah, no, I didn't say a thing. This is just one of these holding tanks. Now, I'm not exactly nearby, but I didn't take a proper picture of the one that was nearby. I'm much further west now. I'm 2 hours west of where I was a minute ago. But they will have water for their tendering systems there, so they don't have to drive far. Swarm farm. This is the latest unit. This is about 2 weeks old that we looked at. It's unit 156. So they've sold 156 robots. Some farmers have 2, and they should go. This is a new one that we just took a picture of. So it doesn't tow. It has a bigger tank. It has a unique boom. Weeded. What do you think of this wheat stubble? That's the stubble we were in. That's 80 bushel wheat, guys. That's Australia. And nice big tanks. The early ones had a 1,000 liter tank. This one I think is 1,500 or whatever. I can't read that number. Just a picture of a ute. I want to just share this with you because this is kind of the typical ute, and it has a few features that are worth mentioning. So first of all, everyone has a booster antenna for their cell phone, because I had the no service all the time, and they had signal. They had 1 or 2 bars. And this one is CB radio. You just pretty well have to be in touch with truckers because you have conditions and you don't have a lot of options for driving. And they love having a tray. That's what they call it, not an enclosed box, but a tray. It's just handier. You can put all 3 sides down and put something on, like pallets, whatever you want to do. It's actually, in my opinion, no wheel wells. This is above the wheels. It just makes, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, actually. It creates true utility of that box. You know, I used to have a truck, and I bought a Dodge Dakota quad cab 4x4 with obviously the quad cab, and then I put a tarp on it, and it had a little box. So I had a 5.3 foot box. After I put the box on, I had a 5 foot box. I couldn't even put my bicycle in the back anymore. So I found that to be, awkward. I had a truck, but I really had to hang my bike off the back. Just weird. These ones have more utility. And then every once in a while you see this, which is kind of cool. But look at that stubble. I mean, you can just tell by driving past that field that yielded. Right. Couple of observations before we go. Not a lot of solar, but the solar that we do see, they will have a battery in that house. They will have a battery. So they don't sell to the grid, they store. So they collect in the day and use in the night. Collect in the day, use in the night. That's how they go. So it's a very interesting system. This is Palamalawa. This is a little town. So shaded roof, like nice infrastructure. Shaded roof over the playground. Nice pump track. Felt very tempting. This is the Gwindir River. So they will irrigate from this river, but only if the authorities allow, based on recent rainfalls. Cotton harvester, I've never seen one before. So lots of stuff in here. This is a round baler back. So what they'll do is they'll pluck each cotton boll off with this header, and then they will air transport it to the baler. So it's a very kind of sophisticated plucking device that John Deere has developed. John Deere basically has the market on cotton harvesters. I asked about See and Spray Select nozzle selection at the John Deere dealer, and they said, go to the Whittier spray shop. So they have a specialty shop, just like SAAP. And that's Jamie. So he's a nozzle guy. So we talked for a long time. But it was really cool to meet him and just to see how he goes about the selling of nozzles to his customers. And I was really, really interested to learn about how he does things. Just a couple of closing slides now. This slide, I'm not sure if I have the next one. No, I don't. What is this?
Depth gauge.
It's a depth gauge. It's a water depth gauge. Overland flooding after a rain. See them? You don't see them everywhere, but I saw lots of these in our driving. And we drove about 20 hours or so. When it rains, it pours, and you get overland flooding. And even on the field that we showed you the bot on, they will build dikes, small dikes that they farm over, that are just elevated by a few feet, but they might be 20 feet wide just to make the slope tolerable, to direct the overland flow. So that it goes where they want it to go, because they have overland flooding. Like it rains that much, so it's quite a different story. Just another farm storage outfit I saw. Went to a field day and noticed that everyone wears blue. I don't know why that is, but that was the color. It's striking. Some of these guys drove 3.5 hours to go to this field day. This is a spot spray trial. I just want to show you the label. This is Biffo. That's glufosinate by a new farm. 200 grams per liter. That's 10 liters per hectare. That's 4 times our high rate. That's 4 times our high Liberty rate. That's what they're putting on Ken Fowler, because they have to get their weeds. And they're going to lose paraquat, and glufosinate is going to take its place. So they're preparing for that. They put this SOA is sulfate of ammonium, AMS, ammonium sulfate, same thing. They put that in there. It's a 200 gram per liter formulation. So this is the treatment list just for their spot sprays, and it was, I just highlighted 2. This is the Biffo, that's 10 liters. Here's Gramoxone, 6.25 liters. They're just absolutely hammering these materials. This is Tony Single. He's a farmer. He drove 3 hours to get here, but I knew him because they make the single shot, and it's a drone system that maps the field for the weeds, and then they spray a prescription map on RTK. It's a farm outfit that sells that. It's called the single shot. Look it up. Irrigation, overland irrigation. This was a 2,000 acre field of cotton, and they have cotton on 1 meter rows with an alternate and a skip every third. And they'll flood irrigate that. Yeah, in a dry country they'll flood irrigate it. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Cotton. Driving home. So yeah, you've got to have good connection. You will see a farm every once in a while, but not that often. Gum trees, eucalyptus, hundreds if not thousands of species. They're just an amazing tree. The tallest deciduous tree I've ever seen. Some of them grow perfectly straight. Amazing variation. Parakeets, very noisy birds. This is kind of windy. And then 3 slides to close. We took a week, my wife came with me, we took a week after I was done my work, and we went to Tasmania. Tasmania is lovely. So we went to the very south tip of Tasmania to a national park, and we came across this beach, and it was just, I mean, okay. There's a beach everywhere you look in Australia, and they're all spectacular. This is just one of them. We walked this track to a place called Cape Hoy, and it was a tough track, but it was absolutely spectacular once we got there. So there's lots to absolutely lots to see and do. It's just an astounding country. My wife held onto my pinky while I leaned over and did this. I think she was holding on to a shrub. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure we were good. Pretty sure we were good. So, yeah, it's just unbelievable. Okay, thank you again for having me here. I'm open if there's any time left. I'm open to any questions,
Yes, good, time, yeah.
discussion, thoughts. Yes.
You didn't really touch on drones and their legality in Canada. Could you kind of name on that right now?
Yeah, so right now, the PMRA decided that drones would be a new and unique application method that they don't have enough information on to make a regulatory decision. And they decided to go one by one on pesticides, and driven by the registrant, Bayers and BASFs of the world. And what that means is, if, let's take Corteva as an example, they decided to pursue the market for industrial herbicides, such as Garlon, XRT, Imazapyr. They had to submit a package that satisfied 4 data requirements: drift information, efficacy information, bystander, operator exposure information, and maximum residue limits for crop use of as food or something. And once they had that and the PMRA were satisfied, they made a regulatory decision and said, yes, you can spray Garlon with a drone, but you have to use at least 40 liters per hectare, 4 gallons per acre, and you have to use a coarse spray, and there was other restrictions. And so the next product that we'll see in Canada will likely be a fungicide. It'll be for tar spot and corn. The other products we'll see are more Corteva products for industrial and sort of rangeland uses. We're not aware right now of an imminent herbicide registration. It is driven by the registrant, unfortunately. So it is currently illegal to spray agricultural products by drone in Canada. Yes, it is. Nonetheless, I want to add this as an addendum. It is a gray area that the PMRA is fully aware of. Is gray. The PMRA is fully aware that Green Aerotech has sold 400 T50s last year. There are 500 in total sold in Canada, and that farmers are using them to spray. They just don't know what to do about it. That's the situation. I don't expect that to change until the PMRA is satisfied that they know enough about drone spraying to open it up to other products that are not currently labeled, but that might be labeled for area, just like Australia did, with the caveat of my opening story. In Australia, some chemical companies don't want their products to be applied by drone because they don't want to be responsible for the associated risks. I really don't know which way this one's going to go. Other thoughts or questions? Control traffic, is that interesting to you? I find it fascinating what they're doing with it, just the water use efficiency that it gives. Scott Shearer was at Magdalene there. He's a scientist with Ohio State, and he studies compaction. And he talks about 30% of our fields, I mean, he's talking corn, soybeans, compacted by wheel tracks.
That was my question. Why do they do it? I thought it was compaction, but I was wondering why.
It's 100% water use efficiency. So the Australian farmers are incredibly literate in weather and soil issues. If you ask an Australian farmer what their rainfall situation is this growing season, they will tell you what decile year they're in compared to the long-term average. So if they say we're in a 50 decile year, they'll say we're getting our median rainfall. If they say we're in a 20 decile year, then they're getting 20% of what they need to get, something along those lines. They know, because everything depends on it. I challenge us to become that literate. You know, sometimes our answer to that question will be, well, we're pretty dry. We haven't really had a lot of rain. You know, something along those lines. The other one is they know their stored moisture. They know their stored moisture. They know how full their soil profile is, and they make cropping and input decisions based on their moisture profile with their crop before they seed. So they're very, very aware of the situation. Very impressive with that. I think we could do a better job of being a little bit more methodical. You know, if you look at crop intelligence, for example, that's a system where you farm based on available plant available water, right? So using the soil moisture probe. That's the yield profit in Australia. The yield profit was out there 25 years ago already. But you can make really better decisions with that. So I like those kinds of ideas a lot. Great. Well, thank you so much again. Yeah.
Thank you so much.